Hi, it's Harry Fine again, the landlord legal expert, giving you tips on how to stay out of trouble if you're a residential landlord in Ontario. Rent is tricky. Rent control makes it difficult for landlords. Almost all units are covered by Ontario's rent control system. If you have a unit that wasn't first occupied prior to the 16th of November 2018, then the rent control rules with the provincial guideline do not apply. All other rentals have a rent control system which caps the annual rent at a certain percentage every year that's set by the government. How much? Well, the last few years it's been 2.5%. That's actually the most it's allowed to be. But it can go between 0 and 2.5% based on inflation that's in effect at the time that the guideline is calculated. So once you have a tenant, and it's tough to get rid of tenants, you can't just raise the rent whenever you want to unless you have one of those units that is exempt because it was not first occupied for residential purposes before November 16th, 2018. If you want to raise the rent, there's only one way to do it, and that's with the Landlord-Tenant Board N1 Notice of Rent Increase. And there's 5 rules that you got to follow. You have to use the LTB form, the N1. The date that you raise the rent on has to be the first day of a rental period, usually the first day of the month. You can't raise the rent more than once every 12 months, or 12 months since the tenant first moved in. It can't be raised by more than the guideline, unless it's exempt, and you have to serve it to the tenant properly. That means you have to give it to the tenant so that they actually know they have it at least 90 days before the date that the rent increase comes into effect. No other way raises the rent. And if you try to raise it some other way, the rent is illegal. Fortunately for landlords, even if you mess up and you haven't given the notice 90 days prior on the board form, if you haven't done that, 1 year after you raise the rent and the tenant starts paying that new illegal rent, 1 year later, the rent becomes legal. So then you're safe. But don't keep making the same mistake. Start using the N1 form every time you want to raise the rent in Ontario. Signing a new lease doesn't raise the rent. Sending an email doesn't raise the rent. You've got to go through those 5 steps. I hope that's helped you navigate the rent control system in Ontario. There's lots more to it than that, but you can get more information at my website, landlordtraining.ca. There's videos and documents on everything you need to know to keep safe as a landlord. We'll see you next time.